The scary story, The Possessed Invasion. Please support us. Subscribe, like, share, and comment if you like the story. This story is sponsored by Unlimited Horror Stories. The day started like any other day. Sarah had just finished her morning coffee and was preparing to leave for work when she saw it. A strange object in the sky, unlike anything she had ever seen before. It was large, disc-shaped, and hovered silently in the air. She rubbed her eyes, thinking she must be dreaming, but the object was still there. She called out to her husband, Jack, to come and see, and together they stood on their front porch, staring up at the object. "What do you think it is?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling. "I don't know," Jack replied, equally stunned. "But it's definitely not a plane or a helicopter." As they watched, the object suddenly shot off into the distance, disappearing from sight. Over the next few days, reports of strange sightings flooded the news. People all over the world had seen similar objects in the sky. Some claimed they had seen strange lights, while others reported seeing humanoid figures hovering in the air. Despite the growing unease, life went on as usual. Sarah went to work, Jack continued his job as a mechanic, and their 2 children went to school. But the sense of unease continued to grow. One evening, as they were sitting down to dinner, they heard a knock on the door. When Jack opened it, he was surprised to find 2 men in suits standing on the doorstep. "Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. Thompson," the first man said, his voice smooth and practiced. "We're from the government. We'd like to ask you a few questions about the recent sightings." Jack and Sarah exchanged a nervous glance before inviting the men inside. The men asked about their sighting and whether they had noticed any strange behavior in the days since. As the men were leaving, the second man paused in the doorway. "If you see anything else, or if anything strange happens, don't hesitate to contact us. It's important that we all stay vigilant." As the door closed behind them, Sarah turned to Jack. "Do you think they know something we don't?" "I don't know," Jack replied, shaking his head. "But I don't like it." As the days passed, more strange occurrences began to happen. People started acting differently, as if they were not themselves. Sarah's boss at work suddenly became cold and distant, and her coworkers seemed to be in a constant state of fear. One night, Sarah woke up to find Jack standing at the foot of their bed, staring at her with empty eyes. "Jack, what's wrong?" she asked, her voice trembling. He didn't answer, but instead reached out and touched her forehead. She felt a sudden jolt of pain, and then everything went black. When she woke up, she was lying on the floor, alone. Her head was throbbing, and she felt disoriented. She stumbled to her feet and made her way to the bathroom, where she saw her reflection in the mirror. Except it wasn't her reflection. It was someone else, with black, soulless eyes and a twisted smile. She screamed, but the sound was not her own. It was the sound of someone else, someone who was not herself. The invasion had begun, and Sarah and Jack were among the first to fall victim to it. As the days passed, more and more people began to act strangely. It was as if they were not themselves anymore. Sarah tried to ignore it and go about her daily routine, but the sense of unease never left her. One morning, as she was walking to work, she noticed a group of people gathered on the street corner. They were staring up at the sky, their faces twisted with fear. She followed their gaze and saw it, the same disc-shaped object she had seen before, hovering silently in the air. But this time, it was not alone. 2 more identical objects appeared, flying in formation. As Sarah watched in horror, the objects began to descend. They landed in the middle of the street, and a strange light emanated from them. Out of the light emerged 3 humanoid figures. They were tall and thin, with gray skin and large black eyes. They looked around calmly, as if they were surveying their surroundings. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. She knew instinctively that these were not humans. They were something else entirely. Suddenly, one of the figures turned and looked directly at her. Sarah froze, unable to move or speak. She felt a strange sensation in her mind, as if something was trying to take control of her thoughts. But then, the sensation passed, and the figure turned away. The three aliens continued to walk down the street, seemingly unaware of the chaos they had caused. Over the next few days, the aliens began to take over the bodies of humans. They would approach someone, touch their forehead, and then take control of their body. The possessed human would then carry out the will of the aliens, without any memory of their actions. Sarah watched in horror as her friends and coworkers were possessed one by one. She tried to warn them, but they didn't believe her. They thought she was crazy. One night, Sarah was sitting in her living room, alone and afraid. She heard a knock on the door, and her heart began to race. She knew who it was. When she opened the door, she saw her best friend standing there. But it was not her friend anymore. It was one of the aliens, wearing her friend's body like a suit. "Sarah, it's time," the alien said, its voice cold and mechanical. Sarah knew what that meant. The aliens were preparing for their invasion of Earth, and they needed her help. She had no choice but to follow them. As they led her away, she realized that everything she knew, everything she loved, was about to be taken from her. The invasion had begun, and it was up to her to stop it. Sarah was led by the aliens to a secluded location outside of the city. It was a large abandoned warehouse, filled with strange machinery and equipment. The aliens were busily working, preparing for their invasion. Sarah was horrified by what she saw. She knew that the fate of the world was at stake, and she needed to do something to stop the aliens. As she looked around, she noticed a group of people huddled in the corner. They looked scared and confused, just like she felt. Sarah approached them cautiously, not sure if they were friend or foe. One of the group members, a man named Tom, saw her and motioned for her to come closer. He whispered to her that they were a resistance group, fighting against the alien invasion. Tom explained that they had been tracking the aliens for months, and they had gathered enough information to create a plan to stop them. But they needed more people to help them execute it. Sarah felt a glimmer of hope. She knew that she had to join the resistance and fight against the aliens. Over the next few days, Sarah worked with the resistance to gather more information on the aliens. They discovered that the aliens were planning to use a mind control device to take over the minds of everyone on Earth. The resistance had a plan to destroy the device and stop the aliens, but it would require a risky mission to infiltrate the alien base and destroy the device. Sarah knew that this was her chance to make a difference. She volunteered to be part of the mission and help take down the aliens. As the resistance prepared for the mission, Sarah bonded with the other members. She learned about their pasts, their families, and their reasons for joining the resistance. She found comfort in their shared sense of purpose and camaraderie. They were all fighting for the same thing: to save the world from the alien invaders. Finally, the day of the mission arrived. Sarah and the resistance snuck into the alien base, taking out guards and avoiding detection. They finally reached the mind control device and set explosives to destroy it. As they fled the base, Sarah felt a sense of triumph. They had succeeded in their mission, and they had stopped the aliens from taking over the world. But their victory was short-lived. As they emerged from the base, they saw a fleet of alien ships descending from the sky. The invasion had already begun, and it was up to the resistance to fight back. Sarah and the resistance knew that they were outnumbered and outgunned, but they were determined to fight until the bitter end. They would not let the aliens win. The resistance had managed to destroy the mind control device, but the aliens had already begun their invasion of Earth. Sarah and the others knew that they had to fight back if they wanted to survive. The battle was intense. Sarah had never experienced anything like it before. The sky was filled with alien ships, firing lasers and bombs at everything in sight. The ground shook as buildings crumbled and explosions rocked the city. The streets were filled with panicked people, running for their lives. Sarah fought alongside the resistance, firing her weapon at the alien ships and dodging their attacks. She was amazed at the courage and determination of her fellow fighters. As they moved through the city, Sarah saw the devastation caused by the alien invasion. Homes and businesses were destroyed, and there were bodies lying in the streets. Sarah felt a sense of despair. How could they possibly defeat the aliens when they had such advanced technology and overwhelming numbers? But she pushed those thoughts aside and focused on the task at hand. She knew that the fate of the world depended on their success. As they fought, Sarah noticed that the aliens were focusing their attacks on certain areas of the city. It was almost as if they were searching for something. Sarah relayed her observations to the resistance leader, Tom. They realized that the aliens were looking for the resistance base, where they had destroyed the mind control device. The resistance knew that they had to protect the base at all costs. If the aliens found it, they could use their advanced technology to wipe out the resistance and take over the world. Sarah and the others fought even harder, knowing that the fate of the world was at stake. They managed to hold off the aliens for hours, but they were running out of ammunition and supplies. Just when it seemed like all hope was lost, a group of military jets appeared in the sky. They had been sent by the government to aid in the fight against the aliens. Sarah and the resistance were overjoyed at the reinforcements. Together, they fought even harder, determined to drive the aliens back and save the world. Finally, after hours of fighting, the aliens began to retreat. The resistance had managed to hold them off, thanks to their courage and determination. As the dust settled and the alien ships disappeared into the sky, Sarah felt a sense of relief. They had survived the first wave of the invasion, but they knew that the battle was far from over. Sarah and the others huddled together, exhausted but determined. They knew that they had to continue fighting if they wanted to save the world from the alien invaders. After the failed invasion, the aliens were determined to find the resistance base. They knew that the humans had destroyed their mind control device, and that they would do anything to stop them from taking over the planet. The aliens dispatched their most skilled trackers to search for the base. They scoured the city, analyzing every inch of it with their advanced technology. Sarah and the others knew that they had to move quickly. They had to relocate the base before the aliens found it, or they risked losing everything they had fought for. They began to gather their supplies and prepare to move. Sarah was amazed at how organized and efficient the resistance was. Everyone had a specific task, and they worked together seamlessly. As they moved through the city, Sarah saw the devastation caused by the alien invasion. Buildings were destroyed, and there were still bodies lying in the streets. The resistance knew that they couldn't let the aliens win. They had to keep fighting, even if it meant sacrificing everything they had. After several hours of walking, they arrived at an abandoned factory on the outskirts of the city. The factory was hidden from view, and it was the perfect location for the resistance base. Sarah and the others worked tirelessly to set up the base. They built barricades and defenses, and they worked together to create a sense of community in their new home. As they settled in, Sarah noticed that the other members of the resistance seemed different. They were more focused and determined than ever before, driven by the need to protect their new home. Sarah felt a sense of pride in the people around her. They were all fighting for a common goal, and they were willing to do whatever it took to achieve it. Meanwhile, the aliens were still searching for the resistance base. They had searched every inch of the city and had even begun to scan the surrounding areas. Sarah and the others knew that it was only a matter of time before the aliens found them. They had to come up with a plan to defend their base and stop the aliens from taking over the planet. Sarah suggested that they create a diversion to draw the aliens away from the base. She knew that it was a risky plan, but it was their best chance at survival. The resistance agreed to Sarah's plan, and they set out to create the diversion. They set off explosions and fires throughout the city, drawing the aliens away from the base. As the aliens were distracted, Sarah and the others worked to strengthen their defenses. They built more barricades and traps, and they prepared for the inevitable attack. Finally, the aliens arrived at the resistance base. The two sides engaged in a fierce battle, with Sarah and the others fighting to defend their new home. The battle was long and grueling, but in the end, The resistance emerged victorious. They had managed to defend their base and stop the aliens from taking over the planet. Sarah and the others were exhausted but relieved. They knew that they had won a major battle, but they also knew that the war was far from over. After the intense battle with the aliens, the resistance was left to pick up the pieces. The base was badly damaged, and many of the members had been injured in the fight. Sarah and the others worked tirelessly to rebuild the base and heal their wounds. They also mourned the loss of those who had fallen in battle. Despite the loss and destruction, Sarah felt a sense of hope. They had managed to defeat the aliens and protect their planet. It was a small victory, but it was a victory nonetheless. As they worked, Sarah noticed that the other members of the resistance seemed to have a newfound sense of purpose. They were more determined than ever before to keep fighting and protect their home. The group also welcomed new members who had been inspired by their bravery and determination. The resistance was growing, and they were becoming stronger every day. As they rebuilt, Sarah also began to reflect on her own journey. She had been an ordinary person, living an ordinary life, until the aliens had come and upended everything. Now she was part of something greater than herself. She had fought alongside people she had never met before, and she had risked her life to protect her planet. Sarah realized that she had grown and changed in ways she never thought possible. She was no longer the same person she had been before the invasion. The world had also changed. The alien invasion had caused widespread destruction, and it would take years to rebuild. But Sarah saw something else in the aftermath of the invasion. She saw people coming together, working towards a common goal. The alien invasion had forced humanity to unite, to set aside their differences, and work together to protect their planet. Sarah hoped that this spirit of unity would continue long after the threat of the aliens had passed. As the resistance continued to rebuild, they also began to plan for the future. They knew that the aliens would not give up so easily, and they had to be prepared for whatever came next. Sarah and the others trained and prepared, constantly improving their defenses and strategies. They were ready for whatever the aliens threw at them. But despite the constant threat of danger, Sarah felt a sense of optimism. She had seen what humanity was capable of when they came together. She knew that no matter what the future held, they would face it together as a united front. The aliens had upended their lives, but in the end, they had brought something greater. They had brought a sense of purpose, a sense of unity, and a newfound determination to protect their home. The scary story, The Possessed Invasion. Please support us. Subscribe, like, share, and comment if you like the story. This story is sponsored by Unlimited Horror Stories.